There's a threshold in personal finance that nobody tells you about until you've already crossed it.
$22,000.
It doesn't sound revolutionary. It's not retirement money. It won't buy you a house. But something fundamental changes at 20,000. Below that number, the financial system charges you to exist. Above it, the same system starts paying you to participate. The interest rates invert. The fees vanish. The investment products that were theoretically available but practically impossible suddenly become accessible. It's not a psychological shift. It's mathematical. The rules of the game change, and most people don't realize they've been playing on hard mode until they finally reach easy. This isn't about motivation. It's about architecture. The architecture of how money compounds, how institutions profit, and how wealth doesn't just grow, it accelerates once you have enough of it to escape the penalty zone. Let's talk about why 20,000 is the number where everything flips. And if you want to understand how money actually works, not how we're told it works, hit subscribe. We break down the systems most people never see until it's too late. Let's get into it. First, we need to understand what happens before 20,000. What it actually costs to be broke. When you're operating below that threshold, you're not just earning less. You're paying more for the same financial services. Your checking account charges a monthly maintenance fee unless you maintain a minimum balance you don't have. Overdraft by $15 and the bank charges you $35. That's a 233% interest rate on a loan you didn't ask for that gets repaid in 3 days. You want to invest? Most brokerages have account minimums. Vanguard's flagship funds require $3,000 just to get in the door. Fidelity's zero-fee index funds sound great until you realize the automatic investment features only kick in after you hit certain balances. You're technically allowed to invest, but the friction is designed to keep small accounts out. You need a car loan. Your interest rate is 11% because your credit score is dinged from that time you floated a bill on a credit card. Someone with an extra 20,000 in their account gets 4% for the same car because they don't need the loan, which is exactly why they get the better rate. This is the poverty premium. It costs money to not have money. And the financial system is built to extract from people who are trying to climb out. Below 20,000, you are a revenue source. So what changes at 20,000? The first thing is interest rates stop punishing you and start rewarding you. High-yield savings accounts that wouldn't look at you before suddenly make sense. These accounts don't have monthly fees. They don't require employer direct deposit or complicated hoops. They just pay you for sometimes 5% annual interest for letting your money sit there. On $5,000, that's $250 a year. Not life-changing. But on 25,000, it's over $1,000. You just made $1,000 by doing absolutely nothing except having enough money to access the account in the first place. Then there's the fees. Most premium checking accounts waive all their fees once you maintain a $20,000 or $25,000 combined balance across your accounts. No monthly service charge.
No overdraft fees.
No ATM fees anywhere in the world. Free wire transfers. Free cashier's checks. The bank stops nickel and diming you because now you're profitable to them in a different way. They're not making money off your mistakes anymore. They're making money off your balance. They take your deposit, loan it out at 6%, pay you 1% and pocket the difference. You're still getting exploited, but at least you're getting And here's the absurd part. The people who least need these perks are the ones who get them. If you've got 50,000 in the bank, institutions will bend over backwards to keep you happy. Premium customer service. Dedicated advisors. Rate bonuses. Meanwhile, someone living paycheck to paycheck with $800 gets an automated phone tree and a fee schedule that reads like a ransom note. 20,000 is where you stop being a profit center and start being. The second shift is access. Real access, not theoretical access. Investment minimums are the quiet barrier nobody talks about. Index funds are sold as the great democratizer. Low fees, passive growth. Anyone can invest. Except most of the good ones have minimums. Vanguard's total stock market index requires 3,000 to start. Their total bond index, same thing. Want to build a diversified portfolio across 4 or 5 funds. You're looking at 15 to 20,000 just to meet the minimums. You can technically get in with less through ETFs, but then you're buying whole shares, dealing with bid-ask spreads, and you can't set up automatic investments the same way. At 20,000 in investable assets, you can actually build a real portfolio. You're not cobbling together fractional shares and hoping your brokerage app doesn't charge you for the privilege. You can diversify properly. Stocks, bonds, maybe some international exposure. The strategies that financial advisors recommend suddenly become doable. Before that point, you're stuck with whatever your employer's 401k offers, and if you're lucky, it's not stuffed with high-fee, actively managed funds that underperform the market while charging you 1% annually for the experience. Then there's credit. Once you have 20,000 liquid, your relationship with debt transforms. You don't need to use credit cards to float expenses between paychecks. You can pay off the statement balance every month, which means you never pay interest. You're using the credit card for points and fraud protection, not as a payday loan with a Visa logo. Your credit score climbs because your utilization drops. You're borrowing 500 on a 10,000 limit instead of 800 on a 1,000 limit. The algorithm sees you as less risky even though your behavior hasn't changed. You just have enough cash that you're not desperate. And when you do need to borrow, you get better rates. Personal loans, auto loans, mortgages, all of them price based on perceived risk. Cash reserves make you less risky. Someone with 30,000 in the bank gets a mortgage rate half a point lower than someone with 3,000, even if they have the same income. Over 30 years, that half point is tens of thousands of dollars. The system rewards people who need help the least. Now let's talk about compounding, because this is where it gets really uncomfortable. Everyone knows the concept. Money makes money. $1 invested today is worth more tomorrow. Einstein allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world, though he probably didn't, but people love the quote because it makes compounding sound magical. It's not magic. It's math. And the math is ruthless. If you invest $5,000 at an 8% average annual return, in 30 years you have about 50,000. Not bad. You turned 5 into 50. If you invest 25,000 at the same rate, you have over 250,000. You turned 25 into 250. Same return. Same timeline. But the person who started with 5 times more doesn't end up with 5 times more. They end up with 5 times more plus all the compounding on that head start. The gap doesn't stay proportional. Here's the thing most people miss. Compounding doesn't really kick in until you have enough to compound. The first few $1,000s you save feel like nothing because they earn nothing. $50 a year in interest doesn't change your life. It barely covers a dinner. But once you cross 20 or 30,000, the returns start to matter. $1,000 a year. 2,000. That's real money. And the psychological shift is huge. You're not just saving anymore. You're earning. The pile starts feeding itself. This is why wealth accumulates faster the more you have. It's not because rich people are better at budgeting. It's because once you have enough capital, the capital does the work. Your money earns more while you sleep than most people earn in a week of labor. Below 20,000, you're in the accumulation phase. It's slow. It's frustrating. Every emergency sets you back. Above 20,000, you're in the acceleration phase. The math starts working with you instead of against you. And the gap between those two phases is enormous. Let's zoom out and look at what this means for how wealth is actually built in this country. There's a popular narrative that anyone can get rich if they just work hard and make smart choices. Save 10% of your income. Invest in index funds. Avoid debt. Retire a millionaire. The math works on paper. But the math assumes you can get to that first 20 or 30,000 without life getting in the way. And for most people, that's the hard part. The median household savings in the U.S. is under $5,000. Not the average. The median. Half of the country has less than that, which means half the country is still in the penalty zone, paying fees, getting bad rates, and watching their money evaporate to the cost of being poor. You can't compound wealth you don't have. You can't invest if every dollar is already spoken for. And you definitely can't take advantage of high-yield savings accounts and premium checking perks and low-interest loans if you're living on the edge of overdraft. The system isn't designed to help people get to 20,000. It's designed to keep them below it for as long as possible, extracting fees and interest the whole way. Once you're above it, everything gets easier. Not easy, easier. The slope of the climb changes. You're still working, still saving, but now the system is working with you. Compounding kicks in. Fees disappear. Opportunities open up. This is how generational wealth happens. It's not that rich families have some secret strategy. It's that they start their kids above the threshold. A $25,000 gift at 18, invested properly, turns into several hundred thousand by retirement without another dollar added. The Head Start compounds. Meanwhile, someone starting from zero has to claw their way to 20,000 while paying penalties for not already being there. By the time they reach the threshold, they're a decade behind. The compounding they missed in their 20s is gone forever. It's not a meritocracy. It's a system with a built-in advantage for people who already have money. Let's zoom out and look at what this means for how wealth is actually built in this country. There's a popular narrative that anyone can get rich if they just work hard and make smart choices. Save 10% of your income. Invest in index funds. Avoid debt. Retire a millionaire. The math works on paper. But the math assumes you can get to that first 20 or 30,000 without life getting in the way. And for most people, that's the hard part. The median household savings in the U.S. is under $5,000. Not the average. The median. Half of the country has less than that, which means half the country is still in the penalty zone, paying fees, getting bad rates, and watching their money evaporate to the cost of being poor. You can't compound wealth you don't have. You can't invest if every dollar is already spoken for. And you definitely can't take advantage of high-yield savings accounts and premium checking perks and low-interest loans if you're living on the edge of overdraft. The system isn't designed to help people get to 20,000. It's designed to keep them below it for as long as possible, extracting fees and interest the whole way. Once you're above it, everything gets easier. Not easy, easier. The slope of the climb changes. You're still working, still saving, but now the system is working with you. Compounding kicks in. Fees disappear. Opportunities open up. If you've got 50,000, that same account gets you $2,000. That's a vacation, car repair, a chunk of an emergency fund. It's meaningful. The advice scales with wealth. The less you have, the less impact it makes. The more you have, the more it compounds. So when someone making $200,000 a year tells you to just save more and invest wisely, they're not wrong. They're just missing the point. They got to 20,000 faster. They had fewer emergencies. They probably started with help, whether they admit it or not. And once they crossed the threshold, the system started rewarding them. For someone making $40,000 with student loans and rent and a car that keeps breaking down, getting to 20,000 isn't a matter of discipline. It's a matter of luck. No medical emergencies. No job loss. No surprise expenses that wipe out months of progress. The difference between financial success and failure often comes down to whether you can survive long enough without catastrophe to build that initial cushion. And that's not a personal finance problem. So what do you do with this information? If you're below 20,000, the goal is obvious. Get above it. Easier said than done, but that's the target. Every dollar you save below the threshold is fighting uphill. Every dollar above it starts working for you. Cut the fees wherever possible. Switch to a bank that doesn't charge monthly maintenance. Use credit cards that don't have annual fees. Avoid overdrafts like they're financial poison because they are. Invest what you can even if it's not optimal. A taxable brokerage account with $200 is better than nothing. It gets you in the habit. It gets you watching the market. And when you do hit that 20,000 mark, you'll already know what you're doing. If you're above 20,000, the game changes. Now it's about maximizing the advantage. High-yield savings for your emergency fund. Index funds for long-term growth. Taking advantage of every fee waiver and rate boost the system offers. And if you're way above 20,000, if you're sitting on 6 figures or more, recognize that the system is built for you now. The compound interest is real. The fee waivers are real. The better loan rates are real. You're not smarter than someone with $5,000. You just have enough money that the math works in your favor. The uncomfortable truth is that personal finance advice is only half about behavior. The other half is about having enough capital to make the behavior matter. You can budget perfectly and still get crushed by fees if you're broke. You can invest wisely and still see minimal returns if you don't have enough to invest. The skills matter, but the threshold matters more. 20,000 isn't magic. It's not going to make you rich by itself. But it's the point where the financial system stops treating you like a resource to extract from and starts treating you like a participant in the game. And once you're in the game, the compounding takes over. Here's the question nobody wants to ask. If the system is designed this way, if it punishes people for being poor and rewards people for having money, what does that say about the economy we've built? We talk about financial literacy like it's the solution. Teach people to budget. Teach them to invest. Teach them to avoid bad debt. And sure, that helps. Knowledge is useful. But literacy doesn't fix a system where the rules change based on your account balance. It doesn't fix the fact that someone with 50,000 gets better interest rates, lower fees, and more opportunities than someone with 5,000, even if they make the exact same financial decisions. The game isn't rigged. Exactly. The rules are public. Anyone can look up the fee schedules and account minimums. But the rules are tilted. They're tilted toward people who already have enough to play. 20,000 is the threshold where the tilt starts working for you instead of against you. So maybe the real question isn't how do you get to 20,000? Maybe it's why does the system need a threshold at all? Why does money have to work differently depending on how much of it you have? The answer, of course, is profit. Banks make more money off people who don't have money. Investment firms make more managing large accounts than small ones. The entire infrastructure is optimized for efficiency at scale, and small accounts aren't efficient. Which means the system will never be designed to help people get to 20,000. It's designed to keep them paying fees until they get there on their own. And once you realize that you can't unsee it, the math changes at 20,000. The question is whether you'll get there before the system bleeds you dry. If this changed how you think about money, subscribe. We're breaking down the financial systems that run your life whether you understand them or not. Next video drops in 3 days. Don't get left behind.